bonus episode of ACA Cast this week. I am your host. My name is Alex Zito. Thank you for listening today. ACA Cast is the official podcast of ACA International, the leading voice of the accounts receivable management industry. In today's episode, this is the third part of getting to know the ACA International Compliance Department. But before we start today, the content presented in today's episode is for general references only. ACA is always ahead of the curve on the constant changes in our industry, and that's why we're proud to present a new education track focusing on some of the most pressing issues of the receivable management industry is currently facing. Join us at ACA's Fall Forum and Expo on November 6th to 8th in Chicago. For more information, go to our website. Here's the interview between ACA attorney member Shaun Ertischek and ACA Compliance Analyst Laura Dadd. They'll be discussing ACA's TCPA guide and our thoughts on the proposed rule. Here's their interview.
Thanks, Alex. Hello, ACA podcasters. I'm Shaun Ertischek, the Associate General Counsel at TRAKAmerica in Bonita Springs, Florida. I'm thrilled to be here today on a new initiative from ACA to conduct a series of podcast episodes where we get to know some of the great individuals working behind the scenes in ACA's compliance department. They are often involved in developing the ACA Search Point document, the ACA guides to the FDCPA, FCRA, and TCPA, articles for Collector Magazine, and the State Guide to Collection Laws and Practices, among other critical pieces of industry news and case law developments. Today, I have the privilege of introducing you to Laura Dadd, a compliance analyst with ACA International. Thanks for joining me for this episode, Laura.
Thank you.
So, Laura, tell us, how long have you worked for ACA, and what drew you to ACA in the collection industry?
Well, I've worked at ACA for 6 years, and I always remember my work anniversary because I started on April 15th, which is tax day. I previously worked in foreclosure. And when I was looking for a new opportunity, I was looking for something where I would be more involved with research and writing, and ACA was a really good fit for that.
And you had mentioned before you joined ACA, you were working in foreclosure. Were you doing paralegal work at a firm?
Yeah, I was a paralegal at a foreclosure law firm. I worked in almost every facet of foreclosure. Started proofing publications and then moved into drafting foreclosures. I took over the junior mortgage redemptions, and finally I ended up being the senior paralegal in the bankruptcy department.
That's great, and certainly a very apropos and related field. So 6 years, that's an impressive tenure with the association. What's kept you working at ACA for so long?
I really enjoy the opportunity to constantly learn new things. A big part of my life is learning new things. There's always something new that's happening. It never seems like things calm down to a status quo. There's always some new regulations, some new case law. I really find that fascinating to learn about, and then things can be applied by our members.
Definitely. That's something I appreciate about the industry as well. So what are your primary responsibilities, and why don't you tell us what a typical workday is like for you?
It's a lot of research and writing. I work on updating our guides and search point documents. Twice a week, I write the daily decision. I answer compliance questions as compliance officer of the day. Also writing articles on compliance issues for the Daily and Collector Magazine. And
I love those ACA daily case law updates with the thumbs up, the thumbs down, the thumbs sideways, so you quickly know how the decision was for the industry. And those are really great synopses that usually a couple paragraphs long and really gets to the heart of the case. So I definitely appreciate your work on those and love reading them. A lot of variety that keeps you busy, especially with everything going on in the industry. In the time you've been with ACA, you've seen a lot of change in the industry, including numerous pieces of legislation, seminal court cases, increased regulation, and transitions at the CFPB. The CFPB's proposed debt collection rule aside, Laura, what's one of the biggest changes you've seen to the industry, and how has that impacted your role with ACA?
Aside from the CFPB, one of the biggest changes I've seen was ACA versus FCC lawsuit that came down, and that has really brought some changes into the industry. It kind of in some ways reset the clock to the pre-2015 declaratory ruling, and we're at the mercy of the courts to figure out what's an auto dialer. Can consent be revoked or can consent not be revoked?
Yeah, that's definitely a huge hot button issue with both the courts and the FCC. So I'm sure we all hope that we get some clarity or more clarity in that area soon, certainly. So what's the current big ticket taking up most of your time right now?
Our TCPA guide has consumed a lot of attention lately. The update contains a lot of good food for thought for those who are affected by the TCPA. One of the best features of the update is the well-thought-out case analysis included throughout. As most people in the industry know, there is not much consensus in the court as to what constitutes an auto dialer, and the information in the guide can help readers formulate their risk tolerance and potential dialing strategies. We are also working on updating our FCRA guide and updating our search point library.
Yeah, that's great, and that's definitely very helpful for folks like me that are not litigators to get all those updates to really help guide our practices. And speaking of big items, one of the biggest we've seen in the industry in some time is the CFPB's proposed debt collection rule. What were you most surprised about or excited about from the proposed rule?
I was excited to see that the CFPB addressed the use of modern technology such as social media, email, and texting. I think there's been a lot of confusion as to how to use these technologies when collecting from consumers, and I think that some regulatory ground rules will take some of the uncertainty out of it.
Definitely. So let's learn a little bit more about you. When you're not at ACA, how do you spend your time? Do you have any particular interests or hobbies?
I do enjoy cooking. I like to experiment with different cuisines from around the world. I also do a lot of different other things, including drawing, painting, sewing, needlework, gardening. I even like to go out and forage for mushrooms. These are some of the things that occupy my time outside of work. I enjoy learning new things, and I'm always looking for a new skill to put in my toolbox.
That's great. Sounds like you're a very creative person with all of both cooking and artwork as well. One other thing you'd like ACA members to know about you?
I sing in a community choir called the Egan Women of Note. I used to sing in college, and this has been a great way to reconnect with something that I really used to love to do.
That's fantastic. Laura, it has been so great talking with you today. On behalf of the industry, thank you for all that you do for the ACA members to help them succeed on a daily basis. Special thanks to my guest, Laura Dadd, for sharing her time and story with us. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Getting to Know the ACA Compliance Staff, and stay tuned for future ACA Casts.
Thank you, Shaun and Laura. The TCPA guide will be available for purchase at ACA's Fall Forum and also on our website. If you enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe to ACA Cast in iTunes or wherever you download your podcast so you'll never miss the show. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we appreciate a ratings on iTunes, or simply tell a coworker. That would really help us out. Thank you, and we'll see you next time on ACA Cast.